Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from listeners like you who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock and at ihearofsherlock.substack.com. And by Dan Andriakos, Sebastian McCabe, Jeff Cody Mystery Series. The latest, Ding Dong the Witch is Dead, starts with an arrow through the heart on Valentine's Day. Now available in paperback or as ebooks from MX Books and Amazon. And now you can enjoy some iHo's swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers. Available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 327, the 2026 BSI Weekend in Review.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became astronomer.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Bert Walder.
Oh, always delightful to get a warm intro like that from Mr. Bill Curtis. Thank you, sir. Yes, this is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Walder.
And Bert, I should warn you, you are under review.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I've got all my receipts here. I'll go quietly.
The big iHo's audit of the season is here.
Thank goodness.
Depending on the feedback we get from our listeners, we may have to let you go.
Let's turn that maybe into a certainty. We can't beat around the bush anymore.
No prevaricating around the bush.
Cratchit, I've been putting up with this for far too long. You give me no alternative but to get rid of you.
Well, there's no way this operation could function without you, sir. This is a
really?
team sport.
Oh, sure.
And we are undefeated going into 20 seasons.
Huh.
That's what you think. But for the folks listening at home, good news. We don't have a guest this episode. You have to deal with the two of us for the entire show.
Oh.
Back by popular demand, it's just Bert and I talking together.
Oh.
Yes.
Jeez, I didn't get the note.
Or is that Bert and me talking together?
It's
if I take I talking together or me talking together?
iBert. iBert is the new.
Oh, I'm going to get the iBert from Apple.
The iBert, yeah.
Hi, Bert.
It has a habit of wandering off when you need to. What happened to the iBert? It was here a minute ago. It got a dreamy look in its eye and walked away.
Oh. Well, we've walked away unscathed from the BSI Weekend. We thought we might do a little recap, give you a sense as to what happened and what happens at these weekends. Sometimes it's instructive to know because you hear about these things swirling around and it kind of seems like a foreign concept. And to have kind of an eyewitness count as to what happened, maybe a preview as to some things that are coming in future episodes, we thought that would be just the thing that the weary, dreary, cold month of January would call for. So strap in and stay tuned. We direct your attention to our Substack and Patreon communities. If you would like to join those, you can join for free or you can join as a paying subscriber. Either way, we're happy to have you as part of that. What it does is it makes sure that you get the information you need from us, that you know when a new episode is out. You have the opportunity to get bonus content from us, additional conversations, perhaps assets and whatnot that other people don't see unless they are paying. And you get to be part of this wonderful, vibrant community of other like-minded listeners who occasionally chime in and have some great observations. And of course, it's all ad-free. You don't have to be interrupted by ads during the show at all. So if that appeals to you for as little as $1 a month, check us out at patreon.com/ihearofsherlock or ihearofsherlock.substack.com. And if you don't want to commit to a subscription, well, you can buy some merchandise from us. We have iHose mugs and iHose notepads available. Check those out at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise. Links to all of these are available in the show notes for your ease. All right. Well, we're marching into that theme to cover some things that are happening in the future before we talk about some of the things that happened earlier in January. Here we are on the Sherlockian calendar learning about the learned societies. Bert, kick us off, please.
Oh, bang, April 1st. We're not going to fool you. There will be an Ash Wednesday dinner on Wednesday, April 1st. Give Shana Carter a call, and you can find out where it's going to be if you're in New York City, and join that.
And also on April 1st, the Transfixed Correspondence of Phoenix is hosting a virtual meeting. So if you can't get to a meeting, this is a great substitute for that. Lauren Sircone is your contact there.
And on the 5th of April, Denver, Colorado. You can forget to attend Dr. Watson's neglected patients because he's not going to show up. It is a meeting, and Derek Belanger can tell you more at dwnp.com.
Also on the 5th, we seem to be doubling up here on the meeting dates, which is great, keeping people busy. Also on the 5th, the crew of the Bark Lone Star out of Dallas, Texas. They're having a virtual meeting. Steve Mason is the contact there. You can find them at dfw-sherlock.org.
And April 7th, Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, the Stormy Petrels are having a study session. Sheldon Goldfarb has all the details, and you can check out the website, thestormypetrels, all one word, .com.
And if you haven't already registered for 221 BCon, it's not too late. It's happening April 10th through the 12th in Atlanta, Georgia, as always. We've spoken with the organizers and some of the participants in the past in some of our episodes. You can check those out. There's a lot to be excited about for 221 BCon. You can find them at 221bcon.com.
And April 11th, the Sespudlians of London, Ontario, are holding a virtual meeting. Ian Bennett has all the details, and you can look at Sespudlians, CESSPUDLIANS.weebly.com.
And step back in time with the illustrious clients for their Victorian dinner on April 11th. That's bound to be an exciting event. The clients always do something new and different there. Louise Haskett is your contact. You can find them on Facebook, on their Facebook page, Illustrious Clients.
And the Bootmakers of Toronto, a virtual meeting. Thelma Beam has all the details, and the website is torontobootmakers.com.
And finally, on April 12th, the Monadnock Sherlockians of Keene, New Hampshire are hosting a luncheon meeting, and our friend Anna Behrens is the contact there. Oh, and you know, one thing I should have mentioned, Bert, it's on the second half of April, but it's worth checking out anyway. If folks want to go to amateurmendicantsociety.com, our latest encyclical is up, and it includes an announcement of our 80th anniversary dinner. More details of that are coming in the future. Just a reminder, you can find all of this information on Sherlockiancalendar.com, and if you have an event that is coming up, whether it's in April or further in the future, let Ron Fish know. His contact information is right there. Okay, well, we are back after, I don't know if it's intrepid or if it's simply enjoyable. A trip to New York City, which is not too far for you. It's a little farther for me. But we got to spend some time at the BSI Weekend. And there's so much to cover. But why don't we just get right into it?
Well, we could. For those of you who've never been to the BSI Weekend, the sort of simple story here is that what had been for most of its time, most of its years, a large number of people, virtually all of them from the United States, gathering together for dinner on a Friday closest to January 6th, which is, of course, our chosen birthday for the great detective Sherlock Holmes. But over the years, it's expanded into many more events, including things other than the invitation-only Baker Street Irregulars Dinner. So for me, I've been coming in earlier and earlier, although some people come in on the Monday or Tuesday of the week. I came in on the Wednesday, and after dropping my bags off, immediately went over to the Frick Museum, which I've really wanted to see. There's been a great restoration of Henry C. Frick's mansion, which is a magnificent display of art, and I had a splendid more than a couple of hours there, and saw other Sherlockians. I saw Peter Blau and Bev Wolov, and Derek was there, Derek Belanger, and I think a couple of other people. It's a wonderful experience. And from there, I went down to the Salmagundi Club. No, wait a minute. That was on Thursday, not the Wednesday. So I guess Wednesday, then after that, I just met up with you, and we went
it was
to
mostly just fricking around on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, fricking around. And then I met up with you, and we stopped in at the Ash dinner.
So other than the Sherlockians you ran into at the Frick, was there anything Sherlockian of note, or perhaps Victorian or Edwardian, anything that could connect us to the reason we're here?
The reason we're here. Well, in a way, it's a interesting detective story in a way, because what's happened is that they've now put the Frick back into a condition that more closely resembles what it was like when the family lived there. For most of its time after Frick's passing, it was really just the lower floor, and it was a different organization. But now you can, in a way, trace the doings and interests of the family and the generation that followed it, because Frick's daughter was quite instrumental.
Who was Frick, anyway?
Henry
Henry
Clay Frick was unfortunately a steel baron, I think is the best sort of shorthand summary of Henry Clay Frick. He had a falling out with Andrew Carnegie. He's mostly remembered for the awful labor unrest and the violence that took the lives of an entire group of workers at steel mills that he controlled when he attempted to break the union with some success at the time, and basically prevent his costs from going up. But he was not, by any means a thoughtful and caring employer. But at that time, there was a great competition between people like Carnegie, Frick, and other great millionaires. Morgan and J.P. Morgan has sort of set the way for this. And he became absolutely fascinated by art and devoted a considerable amount of his fortune to buying, over a long period of time in Europe, some magnificent artworks that are now more or less presented in the mansion in situ, which means, basically where they were and how they were hung when Frick and the family lived there to a large degree. And it's a wonderful thing to see that, because you really do recreate that that era, which puts us in the Edwardian era, certainly.
Yeah, and I seem to, if I can, in that, I think it was the dining room on the first floor. I was there in October. On the dining room on the first floor, I think there was art by, I want to say somebody that was mentioned in the canon, but it may not have been.
Oh, that's a good point.
Was it no, Constable wasn't mentioned. Well, there were constables.
Yeah, Constable, Turner, Caravaggio, everything. Holbein, magnificent
the kind of art that Professor Moriarty would have stolen if he had the chance.
Better than his Gruse, yeah.
Yes, yeah. If he had someone case the Frick house, the Frick mansion, no doubt he would have torn off with some of these. But so it's a wonderful thing just to put you in the mood. Something that is just off the beaten path of the usual places that one might go during the BSI weekend. So
it's a very cleverly curated space.
It is.
I mean, I don't want to turn this into. We've already turned it into, I guess, a commercial for the Frick, but it's curated because the way I say cleverly curated. If normally when you're in a museum, you look at the little tags next to the artwork. Okay, this is from the 16th century, and it was done by this one and that one, and it was a gift of this one and that one, or not, or it's a work on panel with oil and something. But here they've recreated many of the stories, and they have a wonderful audio guide that you can listen to on your phone for free, and they tell you, exactly. What happened here. And between the printed thing on the wall and the audio guide, you learn about some of the history of art, which is, several of these great paintings were completed for one reason, turned down by the person who commissioned them, spent decades back in the artist's studio, were sort of rescued by Frick. And so there's a lot of backstory in much of the art.
And for those of us who are collectors, I think looking into it is called the Frick collection. Frick himself was almost, in some ways, a completist. When he found a topic or an artist that pleased him, he would scoop up as much of it as possible. And I'm thinking in particular, as an example, about Francois Boucher. You go to the Boucher room, and there are 8 panels there that are all oil paintings. And it's the arts and sciences, painting and sculpture, astronomy and hydraulics, singing and dancing, comedy and tragedy, fishing and hunting, architecture and chemistry, poetry and music, fowling and horticulture. Those are 8 different panels associated with Boucher. And it reminded me of kind of like the curated series that we do over on Trifles, like when we did a whole year's worth of episodes on sports in the canon. When you take a kind of a common theme like that and bundle them together and display them in a certain way, whether it's an audio curated collection or paintings or sculpture, what have you, it really tells a story.
Yeah, it does. It's funny that in the last year or so, I've seen several articles in newspapers about paying attention to art. And there is an organization, I don't remember the name of it, but basically it's sort of a semi-secret organization that whose members make appointments, sort of elliptical appointments, for a number of them to gather in front of a particular work of art for on a day and a time. And there's not much interaction among them. What they do is they all focus on that piece of art, that artwork, sculpture, painting, whatever it is, for a longish period of time, and then meet afterwards to discuss it. And, it puts me in mind of the fact that for much of the time of all of this great Renaissance-related and other, even earlier art that we love and admire, this was a primary form of entertainment for the wealthy and the people who could afford it. I mean, in the days before cinema and television, in the days before photography was large scale, the fact is, you'd make your own music in the evening, and you would be living with these artworks, and they would make a great impression on you. It was your primary form of visual excitement. That and other than that, sporting events. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And when you think about it, compared to what we do in the world of Sherlock Holmes enthusiasts, it's not too dissimilar. We pick a story, we focus on it. Many of the groups pick a story and focus on it, and then show up for a meeting and discuss it, or have a quiz, or simply use it as the reason for gathering together. So there's a wonderful through line there in terms of entertainment and enlightenment. Well, speaking of entertainment and enlightenment, you and I enjoyed a lovely dinner at Keen's Chop House, or just Keen's in New York, which is just a wonderful old school establishment in New York. I think it's been around since the 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. And it used to be the site of the Gillette Luncheon, before the Gillette Luncheon numbers outgrew the facilities at Keen's. But it's just one of these wonderful old chop houses, of wonderful throwback to probably what you would find in an establishment like Simpson's in the Strand, or some of the places that Holmes and Watson might have visited. And to add to the character of the place, if you look up on the ceiling, you will see just completely blanketed. The entire ceiling has pipes. And these are all clay pipes, because back in the days when smoking was allowed and even encouraged in such establishments, you could go to a place like Keen's and call for your pipe. And they would have it numbered, or you'd be named, and they would pull it down and they would deliver it to you at your table, and you could smoke. And these pipes have just remained there as an artifact of that old school charm. And there's even a framed glass case where you check in that has some of the pipes of famous individuals from over the years at Keen's.
Yeah, and they've got a magnificent bar with a great illustration, a wonderful oil painting behind the bar, and a very large selection of single malt Scotch. It was founded in 1885 by Albert Keene, and it's on 36th Street and 6th Avenue, I think, or is that Broadway? I don't really remember. Anyway, it's on 36th Street. But it was then the Herald Square Theater District, and it was mostly actors and theater people, and people who'd come to attend the theater. And so there are wonderful handbills of early theatrical productions. In the late 19th century, the theater district was much more south of the city than it is today. Today it extends up, into the 50th Street and so on, 55th Street. But in those days it was much more southern. In fact, many of the great theaters in the 19th century were down by 14th Street, Tony Pastor's Theater and others. But it was a theatrical hangout. And there's a Lincoln Room upstairs where I think we used to, I was at a couple of those early Gillette luncheons, then run by Lisa McGaw. And in those days, this was 15 people at the most around a table. This was
for the early comers to the BSI dinner, right?
Yes, right.
Out-of-towners,
right. Yeah. And this was much, much, much smaller, but it's quite an experience. It's pricey. Today it's pricey. Bring your wallet.
Yes, bring someone else's wallet.
Keen's, right. Bring somebody else's wallet.
So just a lovely experience, a nice way to kick off the weekend. And then as Thursday rolled around, I believe, did we have breakfast that morning? Was that the day?
We did. Bob Scharfman.
Yeah.
We had breakfast with Bob Scharfman.
So Bob Scharfman, who joined us here in the last episode on But I Digress, hosted a wonderful breakfast for, about a dozen people or so. It's just one of those chances to sit around and chat with people before the true festivities kicked in. Just a lovely throwback to some of those smaller gatherings in the earlier weekends of the earlier years of the BSI Weekend. And then we were off to the Churchill Tavern for lunch. What happened there, Bert?
Oh, we had another meeting, happily, of the 3 Hours for Lunch Club, which is something that I brought back. We've already talked about that. I brought that back in 2004, I think, was our first meetings. This was the 22nd gathering, and it acquired the moniker "The Lunch of Steel" by Richard Olkin, and it has
I didn't realize Richard named it. That's good.
He did. There was just a handful of us in the early days, maybe 6 or 7, at the Players, and there was so much Steel memorabilia, his artwork, his pool cue, photographs of him down in the grill at the Players that whimsically, and we talked about Steel, obviously, when we had lunch. Richard coined the word lunch of Steel, which I thought was a lot of fun.
And, I think the thing that has really blossomed out of that was, first of all, each year you produce a printed keepsake with some bit of information about Steel, his life, his work, his family, etc. And from that has grown the Frederick Steel Memorial Committee. And I don't think enough people know about that.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, it's the Frederick Dorr Steel Memorial, Inc., FDSMI. And you can look at our website at fdsmi.org. There's a small group of us. It's a nonprofit in New York State. Contributions are tax deductible. Send us money, please, and I'll send you something back in return. We've got some wonderful handouts that we've done for the BSI Weekend written by Andrew Malick over the last few years. We have another one this year. Last year we did the history of that wonderful image from His Last Bow of Holmes musing by the water, the original of which is one of the prizes of Peter Blau's collection. And we wrote about the history of that and the model for it. It's all very interesting. And this year we wrote about Steel and another artist, Arthur Keller, who also drew some Holmes illustrations. And the thing about Steel was, it's hard to imagine, well, many of the artists who worked in illustration in the late 19th, early 20th century, and Steel was active up through, let's say, the late 1930s, and came to New York, he was only 16 years old, so he was there from the 1880s to the 1930s, let's say. They were completely forgotten. I mean, the people you remember, the notable ones, are one thing. N.C. Wyeth, Charles Dana Gibson, and so on. But Steel had been completely forgotten. And over the years, it's turned out, in addition to his artwork, he was very popular, enormously popular, illustrated many things other than detective stories by Mark Twain and Rudyard Kipling and all sorts of things. It turns out he wrote a lot. He preserved the memories of the golden age of illustration, wrote a memoir, wrote pastiches about Sherlock Holmes. For a while, he was an art editor. When there was a space to fill, he would turn out an essay on the women of the French Renaissance or something in art. When a major artist like John Millais would die, he would turn out 3 pages, a little bit of a biography. He wrote a tremendous amount, including poetry, which turned up. He was a great friend of the arts community in New York in the 1920s and 30s, and in Franklin Adams' column, The Conning Tower, he would contribute poetry. He went to Europe with his wife finally and came back and written some poems about that experience. And it's turned into a rich vein, which Andrew Malick has been mining, since the 1970s. So it's an interesting, very interesting subject.
Yeah, it's really been marvelous to see that sprout over the years and to see which directions it has taken us. So thank you for doing that. Well, Thursday afternoon, we kind of walked off our breakfast and lunch and finally made our way over to the New York Bar Association building on 44th Street.
Oh, yes. Before we get there, though, I want to tell you that on Thursday, I did run down to the Salmagundi Club, where Hal Glatzer
yes.
put on a play. And every year for the last couple of years, Hal has been doing something for. He got his first invitation to the BSI dinner this year, so we saw Hal at the BSI dinner. But he's been putting on these various plays. It was Mrs. Hudson's Musicale. He recreated a birthday concert for Sherlock Holmes last year without Sherlock Holmes, because unfortunately Holmes was having none of it, as he explained. But this year he put on a lovely radio play in which he did the sound effects with a lovely troupe of actors who addressed the whole case about the colossal scheme of Baron Maupertuis. And playing Sherlock Holmes was the great actor Simon Jones. And he had a wonderful cast playing, different roles. And it's basically based on a short story that he published a couple of years ago. But it was an enormous amount of fun. And there were many, many, many of our Sherlockian friends there.
It just struck me that we missed this opportunity as we were dining at Keen's. There was a wonderful, and by the way, Hal's play was on Wednesday. You did remember it correctly.
Oh, it was on
not
Wednesday.
Thursday.
Okay.
Because
Sorry
after that, we saw the cast as we dropped by the Ash Wednesday gathering.
Oh, you're right.
At the Joyce Public House over on West 39th Street. So Ash Wednesday, of course, the adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes, they have been meeting on the first Wednesday of every month for time immemorial. They call it Ash Wednesday, and that just so happens to fall on the BSI Weekend. So they typically open the doors for a larger crowd, and they kicked it off in fine style there at the Joyce Pub. But yeah, Hal and his troupe were there, and they had performed earlier that day at the Salmagundi.
Yeah, that's right. See, these things sort of blur together, but the play is magnificent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
Now,
after
one thing
that,
we did not participate in was the Christopher Morley Walk, which happens
right.
earlier on Thursday, kind of wandering through the streets of New York where Morley would have worked and lived and walked, etc. And it ends at McSorley's Old Ale House, which is down on 7th Street. So I think been around since the 1850s. A wonderful place. You can get two kinds of beer there, dark or light. And the floors are scattered with sawdust, and you can get some saltines and onions and mustard and cheese. Obviously, a very basic fare, but it's part of the charm of the old place. Few people ended up there as well. And also that day, we did not get a chance to go down and see this. The Doylean Awards and Wessex Cup
on
happened
Thursday,
at the Mysterious Bookshop. We've got a write-up about the winners there. You can see those. We've got a link to that write-up in our show notes. But there's some wonderful toy horses, little wooden horses that are raced down a little ramp, and people can buy a horse earlier in the season and kind of stake their claim. And I think Karen Ellery was the winner with Garnett in the lead there. And it's kind of like a Pinewood Derby for horses. And it's in honor of Silver Blaze, as you would imagine, the Wessex Cup.
See, folks, now, so far we haven't mentioned anything that's invitation only. The only thing that's really invitation only is the BSI dinner. So if you've ever thought about coming to New York for the weekend, there's plenty to do and plenty to see. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful. The beyond the activities, it's just seeing the people. That's just these wonderful people like Karen and all the rest of them. And there's a lovely group of volunteers that makes all this happen. The Ash Wednesday group, Shana Carter, Greg Ruby, who handles all the arrangements for the lodging and the venue. Steve Mason helps check in, at the BSI lecture. There's a whole team of people. Peter has been doing we'll say more about that, but Peter's been doing the auction for years. So it's a lot of volunteers and a lot of familiar, friendly faces.
Yeah. Now, one thing that is ticketed is the BSI Distinguished Speaker Lecture. We had the 29th one happen this year, and it was none other than Rupert Holmes. Now, you might think, oh, Holmes, of course, with a name like that, he has to be related to mystery. And those who know Rupert Holmes from popular culture would be scratching their heads, because the single most identifiable thing about Rupert is that he wrote the hit single Escape, which is also known as the Pina Colada song. And people go, what? What? Why is he talking about Sherlock Holmes? Well, not only did he write the New York Times bestselling novel Murder Your Employer, he wrote the score for the Broadway show The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and, as we discovered in his wonderful lecture, and it was more than a lecture, it was a performance, that he has longed to be part of the Sherlockian universe for 60 years. And he brought us through his life story and illustrated along the way with obviously lots of mini stories as well as songs. And I don't want to give too much away, because his lecture is going to be printed in the Baker Street Journal, which is a great opportunity to subscribe to the BSJ. The spring issue will have his complete lecture in it. And, folks, I hope I'm not going too far in telling you this, but we may get Rupert Holmes on the show. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. And if that appeals to you, write in and let us know. Shoot us an email at comment@ihearofsherlock.com with your thoughts and any suggestions for other people we might get on the show while we're at it as well.
One of the many wonderful things, and you described that very well, his talk was really a love letter to the Baker Street Irregulars. But his career is remarkable, and I didn't know the first thing comparatively about Rupert Holmes, but among the stories he told us was his early meeting with Fred Danae.
Who was half of
Frederick
Ellery
Danae,
Queen.
Who's half of Ellery Queen. And his first conversation with a member of the Baker Street Irregulars. And in fact, he chose the name. He told us about his backstory and where he grew up and so on. But he assumed the name of Rupert Holmes, which is something people did when they got into the music industry, because of Sherlock Holmes. And he chose the name Rupert because, it sounded sort of appropriate. And then his Pina Colada song, I'm sure you will have cut in a little clip of the Pina Colada song.
Oh, I got to get the rights to that, though.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, 5 seconds of the Pina Colada song.
And now even 1 second will get you sued.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No fair use, huh?
No.
Maybe you could whistle it. But he rewrote the lyrics of Escape for us with a Sherlockian context. And it turns out that the first song he ever wrote was he put the Vincent Starrett's poem 221B to music. And he sang it for us the second time in his life that it's the only time it's been sung publicly, and the second time he's ever sung it. First time was years ago for his wife, who was there in the front row. And This was just a magnificent talk.
Really was.
A lot of heart.
Yeah. Stick with us. We'll be back after this brief word from our sponsor.
Sherlockian magician, mystery writer, professor, and sleuth at large. That's Sebastian McCabe. In these light-hearted mysteries by Dan Andriaco, Mac calls on his knowledge of the great detective to solve conundrums in his small town of Erin, Ohio. Mac's adventures are shared and chronicled by his brother-in-law Jeff Cody, an admiring but by no means uncritical Watson. Readers say the cast of continuing characters, including Jeff's journalist-turned-novelist wife Linda, makes each new book feel like a visit home again. The McCabe and Cody mysteries are packed with Easter eggs for Sherlockians, along with engaging characters, good writing, solid plotting, and a light touch. As Bonnie McBird said, "You're in the hands of a master of mystery plotting here." David Markham calls the series classic Golden Age mysteries set now. The latest in the series, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, starts with an arrow through the heart on Valentine's Day. And that's not even the main mystery. Dan Andriaco's McCabe and Cody Mysteries are available in paperback or as ebooks from MX Publishing and Amazon.
So after that, people broke up. They went off on their own merry way for a later dinner. A number of us like to go to the wonderful Grand Central Oyster Bar restaurant in Grand Central Station, as the name would imply. And we did our part to help oysters from overrunning the world. You'll recall that in The Dying Detective, Sherlock Holmes is laid up. He's hallucinating, and Watson tells us that there's a segment there where he's talking about oysters possibly overrunning the earth. So we are all part of a group called SPODE, which is an acronym, SPODE, the Society for the Prevention of Oysters Destroying the Earth. And we try to do our part on that evening. And, then folks just kind of wander their way and do their own thing. So, again, all stuff that is kind of smaller fare. Folks are finding their people and going off and enjoying themselves. Now, on Friday, you could certainly head down to the Mysterious Bookshop where Otto Penzler opened it. He has an open house every year from 11 to 5 on the Friday of the BSI weekend. It's just a gathering to be with other Sherlockians and browse the shelves and pick up some wonderful books from the Mysterious Bookshop, which, by the way, is the nation's, perhaps the world's oldest mysterious or oldest bookshop dedicated to mysteries. So it's always worth a visit there. And then we headed off to the William Gillette Memorial Luncheon. Again, this is something that happens every year. It started, as we mentioned before, as a thing for out-of-towners, but it has grown. It's probably about 120 people strong at this point. Very crowded. But as part of that, we would see a play. We had a sketch by Lee Shackelford about Moriarty, which he played. We had Nick Martorelli and Tiffany Knight as part of it. Who else was in it?
Paul Singleton.
Paul Singleton, of course, as Sherlock Holmes. And in this case, Moriarty mistook Walter Paget for Sherlock Holmes, which it makes sense because, as we have heard over the years, Sidney Paget used the image of his brother Walter as the inspiration for the figure of Sherlock Holmes. So it was kind of a wonderful mistaken identity play there. So that was a lot of fun. And this is where we get the timpani out. Ladies and gentlemen, the latest recipient of the Susan Rice Mentorship Award is none other than Burt Wolder. Congratulations, my friend. I was so proud of you for receiving that.
Well, I was very honored, very, very, very surprised. And I'm just thrilled to be mentioned in the same breath as Susan. And, the people who've gotten that award, I mean, it's in Susan's honor. Peter Blau has won that award. I was just very touched and flattered. And, it's a good reminder that as we meet people, who have this sort of shared spirit, it's a great idea to sort of help them in. Who would they like to meet, and what would they like to do, and do they know that there's a local group, and would they like to be more active, and do they know where to send a paper, and do they want some advice? So it's it's a lovely thing to stop and make things a little easier for people. I remember when I first read about the Baker Street Irregulars and wrote to Julian Wolfe, I was, as I have been for most of my life, clueless. I was absolutely clueless, although not as clueless as some have been. Rupert, in his talk, said, I rather thought this was like, sending in box tops for a Captain Midnight, a Captain Midnight club. Perhaps that was what it was like. No, not really. But it's good to help people. But also at that lovely luncheon, and I'm going to go back next.
But before you get to that, though, I want to pause on this idea of mentorship. There are those of us who have been part of this collective, part of this hobby for so long. We just take for granted the things that we know, and we've picked them up along the way over many, many years. So to the degree that we can kind of compartmentalize those or compact them into introductory stories, or like we do here on the show, episodes where we introduce people to these concepts or some of these historical figures in our hobbies or some of the books that are important to know. This is part of bringing others along on this journey rather than just expecting them to show up and having all of this knowledge. We all come to this in a different way with different inputs, and for those of us who are already part of it, I think showing a warm and open welcome and pointing people in the right direction and explaining things, I think that's something you've always done quite well, Bert, is your ability to give people some sort of context and to help them feel like they've been part of it for just as long as you have. And I think that's clearly why you got the award.
Oh, well, thank you very much. As I say, I was very honored and surprised.
Well, not surprised enough, because you usually don't go to that.
No.
Lunch.
Well, I'm going to be going back because it's sort of it's been in a variety of locations, but the luncheon was really quite fun. I mean, I'm not we eat so much during the BSI weekend that the calories are sort of off the charts. But I'll go back next year. It was lovely. It was at Connolly's. I should mention though two things. One is that at that luncheon, you were there with Teddy Niver, and I was at Teddy's table, right near you, too. And, it was wonderful to see Teddy. Teddy is the widow of Tyke Niver, who passed away some months ago, and it was just wonderful to see her there. She looks wonderful, and she's got some very good support at home, and it was very warming and gratifying to see Teddy.
And we should note that we'll have episodes in the show notes, links to the episodes for Tyke and Teddy Niver and for Susan Rice. And the associated memorial we had for her as well. So you check those notes out.
But we forgot that the day before, on the Thursday, in the afternoon, there was a reception for the Morley Montgomery Award for the writers. If you've written something and had it published in the Baker Street Journal during the year of 2025, you and other folks get invited to, have been for the last few years anyway, get invited to a little reception. And that's the point at which they named the winner of the Morley Montgomery Award. And this year, the winner of the Morley Montgomery Award was Fabienne Courage. Is that how she pronounces her name?
That's correct.
Fabienne Courage from France, who wrote a wonderful story about France's Sherlock Holmes. And she was, I think the French term is gobsmacked. She was absolutely gobsmacked.
That's lovely.
By the award. And as soon as I walked in there, I got to meet Damian Thompson. And I was really tickled to meet Damian. He had written, and you'll see this online in the Stranger's Room, just a magnificent essay in The Spectator about the Baker Street Irregulars, about really the fandom, the Sherlock Holmes fandom. It was just beautifully written. It really sort of communicates a tremendous amount. It's a lovely essay. And he'd come over, and I had no idea. And it was great to see him and meet him. And he's working on a book now, I think, about three great Sherlockian writers, Holroyd, Michael Harrison, and Dakin, I think. That could change. But he was making connections, and I know he talked to Peter and some other people. But that was really lovely to have a chance to meet him. I admired his essay.
He was one of the wonderful surprise meetings over the weekend. I got a chance to speak with him, I think on Saturday in the vendors room. Just a charming individual and so curious, and just did a wonderful job with his Spectator piece.
Yeah, and I think he's an associate editor or assistant editor at the. He has an editorial role at the Spectator.
Well, that's always good to know. Yeah. Well, Friday evening came, and there were two dinners. There was the Baker Street Irregulars Dinner, which, as we said, is invitation-based, and there is the Gaslight Gala for those who are in town and would like something to do on Friday evening. And both were just a great deal of fun. I know that the gala is always raucous. It's filled with prizes and singing and sketches and whatnot. I've never heard a bad thing about the gala, even though I haven't gone myself. And, of course, the BSI dinner, I don't want to say too much about that. Again, that write-up will be in the Baker Street Journal. But a number of individuals were granted investiture in the Baker Street Irregulars, which is an honor for folks. And I think there were some of them who have been on the show before, who I wanted to call out. Of course, we have Rich Krasunis. He is here in the Detroit area. He's a member of our executive committee of the Amateur Mendicant Society. And he resurrected the Greek interpreters of East Lansing. And, of course, he is about on every Zoom call there is for Sherlockian meetings. He is one of the co-founders of the Legion of Zoom. We talked with him and with Steve Mason in a previous episode. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And Rich is just a delightful individual. And, of course, our own Madeline Quinones.
Yay!
She received her investiture as well. And you'll recall, anyone who's been listening to this show for any amount of time will know Madeline's voice from our Chance of Listening segment that just wrapped up at the end of season 19. And, of course, Denny Dobry and Evie Herzog, who have each been on the show before, they each received the 2 Schilling Award, which is recognition for service above and beyond. Denny, of course, with his wonderful sales of books to support the BSI Press. That is part of his reading room, I should say reading room, which has now been transferred to the Minnesota libraries. If you'd like to see the recreation of Sherlock Holmes' sitting room, it's going to be available for public display at the University of Minnesota Library. Sherlock Holmes collection. And Evie Herzog, who co-founded the Adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes and who has just done so much over the years. She's one of the recipients of the Susan Rice Award as well. Just a wonderful individual. And we'll have links to all of these folks' episodes as well.
And we should mention that before the BSI dinner, there was a cocktail party. It was a cocktail hour. And at that cocktail hour, there's the tradition is to honor the woman. And the woman this year was Anne Brower Andriaco, who is the wife of Dan Andriaco, who's the editor of the Baker Street Journal. And it was lovely to see Anne and to hear her remarks. She's made enormous contributions over the years, and I just thought that was grand. And I do want to give a shout out to, among those people who were invested, Michael Barton, who's now Baron von Herling in the BSI, Matt Hall, who, as you mentioned, the Earl of Maynooth, P.J. Sullivan, who got invested as the ancient Cornish language, and P.J.'s been helping revitalize the Cornish horrors. And Madeline, of course, and Rusty Mason and Jen Nealon, a lot of the people that we've talked to, and Tom Huey, was invested, which was great too. Who've just been so important to the organization, and have a lot more to do in the years ahead.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be hearing much more from them, including on future episodes, so stay tuned for those. Not necessarily this season, but they will be part of our tracking system. Well, Saturday morning, and again, I know we're kind of slogging you through the weekend with us here, but this is important for you to understand the ins and outs. Saturday morning, that's when the Merchants Room opens up over at the Westin. folks bring their wares, printed materials, ephemera, tchotchkes, jewelry, you name it. It's available for sale in the merchant's room. There were a number of books that we picked up. Two in particular, we're going to be bringing the authors and editors onto the show in the not-too-distant future. Which books those are, well, we're not going to announce just yet because you have to stay tuned for that. But one book I did want to call out that is Sherlock adjacent, and it comes from our friends at Wessex Press and Gasogene Books. It's the annotated Brigadier Gerard. How about that? So when Conan Doyle wrote The Adventures of Brigadier Gerard, this was not too long after the Napoleon Wars. And folks in his time would have been familiar with a lot of the technology, terminology, characters, etc. But, when we move on, and 100, 120 years later, 140 years later, we're beyond that, and folks may not have the familiarity with it. So enter the annotated Brigadier Gerard, which was edited with notes by Colin Samuels. And that's just a lovely way to get a little deeper into the world of Gerard. So after the vendor's room wrapped up, we headed to the BSI luncheon reception.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And I should mention that all through the weekend, we had an opportunity to buy raffle tickets. And do you remember what was being raffled off and for what purpose?
Oh, yeah. Dana Mancini, for the last year or so, has been creating these magnificent works of art that have been raffle prizes. And this year it was a recreation of the Bruce Partington submarine. Beautifully handmade and illuminated. And all of this goes to benefit the Watson Fund, which exists as to assist those people who would like to attend the Baker Street Irregulars festivities, the BSI festivities, but find themselves inconvenienced by a lack of available funds to handle the considerable expense of traveling and lodging in New York City. And that's been going on for many years. It's completely discreet. No one knows who Dr. Watson is. But over the years, Peter, who has been leading the auctions, in addition to the raffle tickets, of course, there is an auction of donated material. Some of it, very interesting and very rare. And over the years, Peter has been doing these auctions and has generated thousands, certainly tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Watson Fund over the years. And this was a wonderful occasion. He stands at a podium wearing a blue jacket that has been his trusted wardrobe for years, and a suitably Sherlockian tie. But at the end of the auction this year, he announced the idea that perhaps he should pass on this responsibility to another generation and turned to W.S. Monty. You, Scott Monty,
Who? What?
and took off his jacket and presented you with his jacket, and I may say that you have only a milkshake or two to consume before it will fit you, and pass the gavel, the honor of doing these auctions, over to you. And it's a considerable passing of the gavel. And how interesting this weekend, because of course we didn't mention this, but at the BSI dinner the night before, Michael Keane Wiggins announced that after 7 years he was passing the baton of leadership for the BSI over to Steve Doyle. So this was a real weekend of passing the gavel, passing the tradition on.
Yeah, and you're right about Steve. I neglected to mention that, and I think we will have Steve on the show. He's been on the show before, obviously, but not in his capacity as Wiggins, and we would want to obviously speak with him about some of his plans. We'll give him a chance to settle in. let the dust settle around him and make some progress. And I think there will be a reason to have him on probably midway through the year. The BSI is going to make a big announcement, so we'll have to stay tuned for that. But yeah, it was.
We're not buying Greenland, are we?
No. Although the BSI weekend was a little temperate in New York this year. It wasn't really cold. We've had some real freezing temperatures there, and doing it in Greenland would allow us to get back to that.
Oh, okay. Well, I look forward to the announcement. That'll be great.
But the announcement is not has nothing to do with Greenland. But the responsibility that Peter passed along to me is it's a great honor, and it's an important aspect of what we do. New York is not cheap, and there are all kinds of people, young and old alike, who may not be able to afford it. And giving them the opportunity to come in and partake of these activities. There are no questions asked when someone submits their needs to Dr. Watson. They're not put under great scrutiny. And from my understanding, there's been a lot of generosity around that. And I hope to help continue in that tradition. And I should mention, too, the blue jacket, there's kind of an in-joke here as well. When Peter turned 80, the year Peter turned 80, Paul Singleton and I did a sketch at the BSI dinner called The 2,000-Year-Old Sherlockian. And it was a nod to Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, who, of course, famously did their 2,000-Year-Old Man sketch. And Paul played the straight man, like Carl Reiner, and I played the 2,000-year-old Sherlockian in the style of Peter Blau. And I managed to secure a light blue blazer from eBay. And Bev, Peter's partner, got me his Sherlock Snoopy tie. And I padded out my waist and donned the jacket and tie and joined Paul up there as Peter, as the 2,000-year-old Sherlockian. And Peter himself was in the audience and was roaring with laughter and really took it to be the birthday gift of his 80th that we had intended. And so that jacket was auctioned the day after at the auction. Peter auctioned off that jacket, and I think Glenn Maranker won it, and it eventually fell into Peter's possession because the BSI Trust, the Houghton Library, did not want physical objects. You know, we were thinking of doing it like a Smithsonian-type display, like Ted Baxter's jacket from the Mary Tyler Moore Show in the Smithsonian. But Peter had it, and he turned over not only his original jacket, but the auction jacket to me. So those are both in my possession now. And I'm not a 44 regular. Let me just say that.
Well, you are irregular, so that's something.
I'm more of a 40 irregular.
Yeah.
So that was Saturday, and people kind of some people leave at that point, others stick around. There's a wonderful tradition called Lost in New York with a bunch of Sherlockians that happens that evening at Rosie Dunn's. Jerry Kegley hosts that. We, of course, have traditionally gone to an Indian restaurant for the Pondicherry Lodgers. But again, it's more of this, kind of informal, smaller group kind of thing where folks find their own way.
Yeah. And I was sorry to miss the Pondicherry Lodgers. I'm not going to miss that next year.
Yeah, it's always good to get some Indian food. Yeah. And then Sunday, for those who were still around, the Adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes wrapped things up with a farewell brunch. Again, informal, but just a fine way to kind of say your final goodbyes to people and find your way back home. So all in all, just a wonderful weekend of activity, and more importantly, of getting to know new people, getting to connect with old friends, and just feeling the community around what it is to be a Sherlockian in New York in early January. Well, folks, you may recall that at the end of season 19, we wrapped with our final episode containing Madeline Quinones and her A Chance of Listening segment. I'm pleased to say that we actually have a replacement. Well, there's no replacing Madeline, is there? But we do have a segment that takes place here that we wanted to share with you. We've been teasing it over the past few episodes, and we are pleased that we get to bring it to you now. It's a new segment that we're calling Examining the Pictures. It is a film or television review by our friend Christian Mongard.
"1985 was a very good year for films and film fans. I was 13, and having grown up with the films of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, I was ready for the adventure and spectacle of both Back to the Future.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
And The Goonies. But there was another film that really made an impression on me that year, being a nerdy Sherlock Holmes fan, probably the only one in my hometown of Silkeborg in Jutland in Denmark. My name is Christian Mongard. Welcome to Examining the Pictures. I had been aware of Sherlock Holmes since I began reading books at a young age, and now I was treated to one of my first film incarnations of Holmes and Watson, thanks to Barry Levinson's Young Sherlock Holmes, which was known by its other title at that time, The Pyramid of Fear.
Before a lifetime of adventure came the adventure of a lifetime.
What's your name?
Holmes. Sherlock Holmes.
The Granada Sherlock Holmes with Jeremy Brett and David Burke had begun the year before, but I'm not sure when we got that on Danish television, though I did see it when it was first aired, thanks to a crime and Sherlock Holmes loving mother. And Young Sherlock Holmes presented me to exactly that. A young Holmes and Watson, much closer in age to me and therefore very relatable. And boy did I love that film. I still love it, wholeheartedly and unapologetically. I watch it at least once a year, and I still find the mystery, the atmosphere of a snow-covered London, Bruce Broughton's brilliant music, the groundbreaking special effects, and the relationship between the two protagonists so beguiling. In the film, the screenwriter Chris Columbus permitted himself to imagine what would have happened if Holmes and Watson met as teenagers at boarding school. In the opening credits of Young Sherlock Holmes, Columbus ensures the audience that his little thought experiment is done in the spirit of Conan Doyle. Surely he must have meant in the spirit of Dr. Watson's stories about his friend, but no matter. In an interview with the New York Times in December 1985, Columbus said, "I was very worried about offending some of the Holmes purists. The thing that was most important to me was why Holmes became so cold and calculating, and why he was alone for the rest of his life. That's why he is so emotional in the film. As a youngster, he was ruled by emotion. He fell in love with the love of his life. And as a result of what happens in this film, he becomes the person he later was." I think Chris Columbus mostly succeeds in what he set out to do. And it probably helped that noted Sherlockian scholar and collector John Bennett Shaw was a consultant on the film, reading the screenplay and giving notes. The year before, Columbus had written another adventure classic, Gremlins, and he also penned The Goonies and later went on to direct the first two Home Alone films and the first two Harry Potter films. His latest project is the film version of the first book in Richard Osman's hugely popular Thursday Murder Club series. He's a very good writer and director, though he hadn't started directing in 1985. For that, Steven Spielberg, who was the producer of Young Sherlock Holmes, had chosen Barry Levinson. Levinson later directed Good Morning Vietnam, Rain Man, Bugsy, and Wag the Dog, but he was fairly unknown at that time, having only directed Dinah and The Natural with Robert Redford. Now it was time, thought Spielberg, to get him to do something completely different. Thank you for that, Stephen. Young Sherlock Holmes, which takes place in 1870, begins with a horrible death. A man hallucinates so violently that he jumps out the window and dies. In the film, two more men die the same way after having had terrifying hallucinations, and it turns out there is a link between the three men. A mysterious hooded figure triggers the hallucinations with a blowpipe and poisonous darts. We then meet Watson, who is arriving at his all-new, all-boys boarding school in London, where Holmes is about to break his violin, dissatisfied that he hasn't learned to master it in 3 days. The two become fast friends, and Holmes introduces Watson to his girlfriend Elizabeth, who is the niece of a retired teacher who is still living on school grounds, the eccentric Professor Waxflatter, a polymath and inventor, working on a flying contraption that looks like something Da Vinci could have made up. Waxflatter is also involved in the mystery, which has to do with an Egyptian death cult lurking in a pyramid in the middle of London. I won't spoil too much of the plot in case you haven't seen the film, which I of course find very unlikely. Only say that the film tries to explain both why Holmes chose to live his life alone, how he got the deerstalker and the crooked pipe, Chris Columbus went for the popularized version of Holmes, and how he first met his arch enemy. But I can tell you that there's a lot of fun mystery solving where we get to see Holmes in action and Watson marvel at the mental prowess of his new friend. There are also several scenes where the film effects people try their best to scare the audience with stop-motion animated candlelight, roasted birds and stained glass windows attacking people when they're having their hallucinations, that is. Even poor Watson experiences the cream puff cakes he loves so much, attacking him like the Lilliputians attack Gulliver. The stained glass knight that jumps down from the window and charges at a priest is a very early and pretty impressive computer-generated effect made by a part of Lucasfilms called Pixar. Later, this part of the company was sold off and became the Pixar we know and love for their computer-animated films, the first one being Toy Story from 1995. The two young actors playing Holmes and Watson, Nicholas Rowe and Alan Cox, are very good, and the dynamics and friendship between them is very believable. Rowe is tall, lean and has the right profile to be Holmes, and the smaller, stockier Cox, who is the son of actor Brian Cox, is a bit clueless when it comes to solving the mystery. He's not dumb though, and he is a good friend to Holmes. But what I love most of all in the film is the period setting. It is so beautiful to look at, and the mix of studio shoots and location shoots give the whole thing a fairy tale quality I really appreciate, especially since this is a pastiche, a what-if story based on the real stories of Holmes and Watson. Combined with the music of Bruce Broughton, which really brings out both the thrill and the adventure and action of the story, young Sherlock Holmes becomes that rare of beasts that does something new with the characters while staying true to the spirit of the original. It doesn't shy away from the drama and scary moments, while at the same time being both funny and adventurous. There are quite a few Sherlockian connections in the film. Nigel Stock, who plays Waxflatter, was Dr. Watson to Peter Cushing and Douglas Wilmer's Sherlock Holmes in a TV version of the stories broadcast between 1964 and 68. Anthony Higgins, who in Young Sherlock Holmes plays a favorite teacher of Holmes's, Professor Wraith, also played Sherlock Holmes in a TV film, Sherlock Holmes Returns from 1993. Patrick Newell, who plays one of the unfortunate men who die in Young Sherlock Holmes, played a part in A Study in Terror from 65 and Lestrade in Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson from 1979. And of course Nicholas Rowe, Sherlock Holmes himself, plays a film version of the detective in Bill Condon's quite wonderful Mr. Holmes with Ian McKellen as an aging Holmes who goes to the cinema. Well, that's all for now, folks. I'll be back soon with another moving picture or TV show about our intrepid heroes, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. Thank you for listening.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
What a splendid introduction to the film. That's magnificent. And what a great addition to the podcast. I'm just thrilled that Christian is joining us. How frequently will we be hearing from him?
Oh, every episode.
Wow.
This is a new segment. To the degree that Sherlock Holmes exists in popular culture, certainly on the screen, both small and large, it's astounding to me that we didn't think of having a film or television review segment on the show prior to this. And to have someone like Christian, who actually does this professionally is, I think, a huge win for us.
Oh, I do too. Well, it's an easy thing to think, gee, we should be talking about the film, but the whole thing is Christian, his love of it and his experience with it and his sensibilities. It's magnificent.
Well, those jaunty strings mean it's time for everyone's favorite quiz show. I was going to say canonical quiz show. It's a Sherlockian quiz show, but it's called Canonical Couplet, where we give you 2 lines of poetry and we ask you to come up with your best guess as to which Sherlock Holmes story we're talking about. The last time we were around these parts, we gave you this clue. Watson, down for breakfast, had no idea at all he'd soon be off to Paddington to answer Sherlock's call. Bert,
yeah,
what do you have to say for yourself, for us?
Oh, that's easy. Very easy. That is perhaps the best novel-length case Holmes ever solved. It's all about workers. It's all about labor unrest. It's all about Pennsylvania. It took place in a chewing gum factory, and Watson called it the Valley of Fleer.
Wow. That hits about as hard as that gum that comes wrapped in those cards. No. I turn, as I always do, for moral and spiritual support to our friend Eric Deckers, who said, "Incroyable, I've solved it." That's French, by the way. It's the story of the time that Sherlock Holmes went undercover in Wales as the son of a coal miner to investigate the murder of a coal miner who was blackmailing another coal miner into letting their son and daughter marry. It's the story Watson called How Boscombe Was My Valley. Jeez. Wait, that's not it at all. It's actually the Boscombe Valley mystery. I thought Roddy McDowell was a little too young to be Sherlock Holmes. Yes, Eric, that is correct. Boscombe Valley mystery. And someday I will tell you how I met Roddy McDowell. That's a story for which the world is not yet prepared.
Ready.
No. But we do have a number of people who threw their deerstalkers into the ring, so let's give the prize wheel a big spin and see exactly what happens. And it lands on number 22, and it looks like the winner is Bruce Harris. Oh, our friend Bruce. Congratulations, Bruce. We will have, I guess it is a Scharfman book on its way to you, so stay tuned for that. If you would like to join the likes of Bruce, then we'll give you a chance. We'll have, something we picked up at the BSI Weekend as a prize this time around, and we will give you this clue. The oldest inspector and the very youngest constable would shake Holmes's hand for finding those responsible. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If we choose your name at random from all the correct answers, you'll win. Good luck. Oh, I can't believe we've done it again.
Whew.
Hard to believe, huh?
What a full, rich program.
Well, it is high in calories, that's for sure.
Something for everyone, as long as everyone is you and me.
Well, I hope folks have enjoyed this. It's been an interesting journey, a lot of inside baseball. But again, we do this because it's important for people to understand how the hobby comes together and some of the things that are available for you to do. And again, we direct your attention back to the Sherlockian calendar, which has a few items that are local in nature. So it's an opportunity for you to seek out or perhaps even create your own opportunities near you. Well, meanwhile, this is the always nearby Scott Monty.
And I'm the usually very distant. But together. But right now, no, I'm actually quite intimate. Burt Wolder.
You do seem to have things together at the moment. That's good.
Well, it's not going to last.
Oh, well, before it does run out, together,
yes,
we say, the game's afoot.
The game's afoot.
You know, I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I'm neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.